when they did, and I said, that's when I started to drive it. I mean, I can drive to church, but we have two lane road and there's one.
The lights are awful. If there's oncoming traffic, there's the lines. Did you have,
Okay, let's begin with our studies today, ladies. We're gonna begin with a prayer, and then from there, we'll go into our continued readings of 1 Corinthians. We will finish around 10:50 today. I have a funeral at 11 o'clock. So a 50-year-old woman from cancer. Her name was Barbara Singeridis, but her maiden name was Pappas. Her mom and dad were, I believe, Nico and Joan or Joanne. I don't know if those names ring a bell to you.
No Barbara Sakurai.
No, Singeridis. And that's her married name.
Oh,
And it was like Italian or whatever. It's not a Greek.
it
So
would be here.
yeah, at 11 o'clock. So that's why we're gonna finish at 10:50, and then
I like the
Look at the church.
cremation. We had,
it's always good to have chrismation. That means you're bringing people to the faith. Okay, let's stand up. Let's do our prayer, and we'll go from there. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For the prayers of our Holy Fathers, Lord Jesus Christ, our God, have mercy on us and save us. Amen. Please be seated. Oh, yeah. So we're in Corinthians 1. Does anyone know exactly what chapter we're in? Perfect.
I don't
Concern-
like Corinthians.
Concerning marriage. Sorry, this should be even better now. Wait till it talks about marriage and how you're supposed to be. Then you can really evaluate your own marriage and see if we follow into that. So, Bess, would you like to start, please?
Now concerning the things of which you wrote to me, it is good for a man not to touch a woman. Nevertheless, because of sexual immorality, let each man have his own wife, and let each woman have her own husband. Let the husband render to his wife the affection due her, and likewise also the wife to her husband. The wife does not have authority over her own body, but the husband does. And likewise, the husband does not have authority over his own body, but the wife does. Do not deprive one another except with consent for a time, that you may give yourselves to fasting and prayer, and come together again, so that Satan does not tempt you because of your lack of self-control. But I say this as a concession, not as a command. For I wish that all men were even as myself, but each one has his own gift from God. One in this manner, and another in that.
Okay, so pretty straightforward concerning marriage. Now, you can understand where he was coming from. You can see where he's coming from. Paul, first of all, his life, Paul was not married. Paul was celibate. He lived a life now devoted solely to God and his ministering to God and his people. But what is important here that I think is kind of imperative is, did you notice how it's almost like you give yourself to your spouse and then your spouse gives themselves to you? And there's a lot of humility in that, because I don't think our current generation sees that way. It's always how I want it, when I want it, whatever I want, and stuff like that. And in the past, there was a mutuality in which, okay, whether you're talking about with intimacy and stuff like that, it was there for each other. But sadly, now you see a lot of pride into this. And then that's why now there's no necessity for marriage, because people will do with anyone whenever they want. And that's why the sanctity of marriage, it does not exist. And then in turn, I can't tell you the amount of young people I talk to who despise the aspect of marriage. And I think I have to study more, but I think a lot of it has to either come from either personal feelings where maybe they've come through families who've gone through divorce, or families who have had afflictions of abuse, or societal situations, or friends who just, they only see the evils that can exist from a marriage. And usually I'm brokenhearted when I hear that, because I myself in my own spoiled manner only see the blessings of marriage, even with the common headaches that all of us suffer. Right? Okay, bulimia, complaints, this, that, whatever, right? Struggles, ups and downs, things that we have to deal with and everything else. But when you look at the beauty of marriage, it's a partnership, co-partnership that is completely and fully Christ-like. When I tell people, thing like, what does that mean? I'm like, well, you think about what it means to be Christ-like. It means you're being humble, it means you're being selfless, it means you're ministering and serving one another. Sadly, what always happened was, well, you can also look at the humanity. We had a hierarchical attitude where the man had the role as whatever, as the gatherer and fending for everything, and the wife, the female, the aspect was the nurturer and the one that stayed in the home. Now that has evolved is now both are taking on those mantles where a man might have taken a little less more of the gather, and now it's almost equal parts. I just see a lot of positives in the equal parts, because in turn it puts everyone into the avenue that we're all the same, and that you have to put in the same amount for it to succeed. You can't depend on the one. If you solely depend on the one, it will crumble. Whether one will crash, one will burn, and on the other side, someone will abuse and take advantage of the situation. And so that's why with here, even just St. Paul is talking about, even though he's talking about sexual intimacy and immorality and stuff like that, it also relates to the relationship of what we're supposed to do as just human beings and how we do that in the aspect of marriage. But that I see marriage as like a different echelon. It's a different realm than compared to like just who you are as a human being, because all of us can just kind of up through life and do what we want to do. But I brought it up last week, and I think it was in this group. And you saw what I put about the guy from CNN who says, I'm co-partnering with this person who I just decided to have a kid with. There was no aspect of marriage. And if you ever notice now, which is actually even more disturbing, is even in commercials about relationships, even like engagements and stuff like that. So notice they don't even show them getting married in a church. So it's outside and outside.
Rarely.
Yeah, if that, I don't even, I like, looking like, for the K Jewelers and stuff too. They'll show them getting married, but it's outside. You show them doing this, it's outside. So the church is irrelevant. So again, it's subliminally taking out God and Christ from it and just focusing on that and the material attitudes of what comes with relationships and marriage. And that's why I think this is why we're in a very interesting predicament. It's very hazy. People just do. There's no clarity. They don't know why they do or how they do. And so then in turn, that's why you see the weakness with marriage, because they can't find a purposeful marriage. Because then they'll say to you, I can have a kid, I can be with someone I like, and if it doesn't work, we're gonna break up. And you move on, right? Where they find marriage is the Greek term, teleporia. It's an agony, it's a struggle, and they're like, oh, for what? And what is it worth? And stuff like that. And it kind of breaks my heart, because when you see people who are in a marriage, and actually I'm speaking to 3 people who have had long, beautiful marriages, there's struggles, there's ups and downs, but through that, you guys were able to celebrate not only the beauty of life, but then to celebrate each other, to grow with each other, and then in turn to have the beauty of your children and grandchildren, round about your table. So I guess that's the sad part, because we're also destroying the fabric not only of society but of the family. And there's no purpose then, because if you can't define someone as father and mother, and then to see their roles and with the children, that's why I think where our world is just so scattered and strayed, is that there's no focus, there's no foundation. And that's because of our, as a establishment, breaking down the realities of marriage, and that we've only made marriage an obstacle instead of something to be joyous. And it's very much, it's a difficult obstacle in life. I can't tell you, my couples, everyone I talk to, most, they fret so much about marriage. I said, I'm like, it's life. I said, that's like you breathing, you're saying, oh, this is such a difficult situation. I said, why? And I said, now it's different if you just did, like, you just said yes, if the person proposed to you and you didn't feel in your heart, but when you're with someone who you can envision being able to live the rest of your life, through thick and thin, all those various situations, that is such a powerful commitment that, when it's blessed with our Lord and you believe it and participate in it mutually, I think there's nothing greater. I mean, we were created by God for the aspect of communal participation. In other words, not to be by ourselves. So that's why even St. Paul even talks about celibacy. There's so much beauty in that intimacy of being with someone, not only physically, but I'm talking about spiritually, connected, united, where then you have someone to trust, someone to lean on, someone to grow with, someone to grow old with, and just to be there throughout your life. Because that's when they talk about that real word companionship. I think of the term, I do think of the term like a soulmate, someone who's a kindred spirit that you are just in line with, you work with, you participate with it, and naturally for it to succeed, it has to be a duality. It has to be both parties. It cannot just be the one. It cannot be the one more so than the other. It has to be a mutual participation. And that's why if it's outside of marriage, sadly, those relationships don't succeed. And then naturally, then their units, their family units, also suffer. Because then from there, you see the fractures that exist in their lives, and that only gets worse with life. Unless there's some powerful enlightenment, there's powerful, recognition, repentance, forgiveness, and just trying to work things out and say, hey, I wish I did, or whatever. Sadly, that's when we then see our children and our children's children, and they, they're in a sad state. That's why I feel for them. And I'm not even talking about, I didn't even bring up about like homosexuality, there's other definitions as well too. We got these situations where I'm just talking about right here, the general family unit, because it's a very tough situation. And sadly, it's not encouraged. And then actually, us as a community, as a church, we aren't promoting the beauty of it. The only thing that predominantly is promoted with the weddings are the obstacles, the stress, the anxiety, the over the top and everything else. That's why, like I've been telling people from like my couples from even when we had COVID weddings or whatever, I said, okay, even though you only can have a certain amount of people, you can still, there's a lot of beauty in it. And I said, if anything, this prepares you for life, because you might want everything one way, but it's not going to happen. So what are you gonna do about it? And that's where you're gonna see the two of them work everything out, and you have to, right? That's an understanding. And understanding that there's a lot of humility and a lot of selflessness, and God willing, we can see that. And that's why when we look here, I like what he says here. St. John Chrysostom says here for verse 7:4. I'm sorry. The mutuality of marriage, the equality of commitment. Okay, so right there, you're talking about it has to be of equal parts. That Paul enjoins here is unprecedented in his era. See, as I said before, in that era, as we know, there was a hierarchy, right? It was the man who had the dominance and the woman was submissive. Okay. So speaking of husband and wife, St. John Chrysostom teaches neither is master of himself, they are servants to each other. That's very powerful. It means they're servants to each other. Now, but that has to be an equal servitude, because the problem is you'll have one that abuses it. And truthfully, it always was where if a woman, I could never understand that, where I would see people, predominantly women, in complete servitude, not only to the husband, but to the family. And then I'm like, so then what is she gain out of it? Now, my whole point is that you're not supposed to gain something out of marriage, but you have to feel some sustenance. You have to feel some sort of respect. And sadly, I took to the extremes, like when you look at like those TV shows of like, what is it, that stupid polygamous ones where it's like, 3 women are married to 1 guy. And all these other things. It's like on TLC.
Yeah.
It's like they have either some Mormon or Christian base where they show polygamy, that they're married to 3, 4 wives, and how they handle everything else. And I watch it, and you know what it feels like you're watching? It's like you're watching something we always thought was insane to be real, and now you're bringing it to a reality like it's normal. Okay, so it's an insanity that you're making for normal. The physicality, the mental, and let alone spirituality of having multiple wives is not only a degradation to Christ, because that just doesn't make sense, but it's also, I'm very, not only very against it, but very sharp, because it's clearly biased and it's clearly prideful, because it's the husband, and then they're all submissive to him. And that he's trying to enhance or encourage a balance that all 4 of them are equal parts. And that's an impossibility. I don't care who you are, what you are. It doesn't work that way. Especially when marriage, union is created for 2 to 1, 4 to 1, 3 to 1, even 2 to 1. it does not work. And so that's where I struggle when I see that. And then also look at the other cultures and faiths. Muslims, even Judaism has some. Look, Judaism is very, so they might not have polygamy, but man, they are very staunch with the man. I mean, look at their worship. The men are clearly defined as something higher or whatever, and have their own area of prayer. And the women are separate, same with Islam, right? They switch, they have separate sides. We also kind of dictate that, but not so much now. And then also with the humility of them wearing, the women, why they wear the full clothes, the coverings. Even Jewish women wear the mandilya and stuff to the cover. Now, they might not wear the
Oh,
full,
you're talking about
but the burqas.
no, I'm talking the Jewish because I have many, the Orthodox.
There's various ones though, but it shows to the degrees of severity.
Because I had a lot of Jewish friends and I had to go to some services.
Hmm.
And you didn't see, they were the reform, you did not see
Yeah.
any of that.
Right, that's different.
Yeah, it's reform, but the Orthodox, yeah.
Yeah, well, and again, it's so each, why, there's there's Orthodox Christianity that have extremism as well too. Where they'll have the separation. I don't find the separation of the males and the females in the physical church is a big issue. But
We used to get that.
yeah, but it's irrelevant now. I think now it's just more practicality. But heck, I'd be happy if they're all together. That means they actually attempted to come to church. Now, predominantly it's the women bringing the children to the church. If they do, but now the women my age, they don't care. I know women my age. I don't know. I feel bad, but I know quite a few women. And I'm not speaking for everyone, so please apologize when I speak like this. But I know a lot of people my age, both male and female, especially with kids, are very lazy. And they use Sunday as a very good lazy day. There's no drive to want to go to church. Many in my age group. Now, there are exceptions, and I know many of them, okay? And you probably have them in your own family, but there's a lot that just say like, or I'm tired, I can't. And then the excuses then roll out, and then you clearly, once the excuses have overlaid, you clearly now you remove the priority of God in your life. Where they'll tell me, I believe, I said, that's not a good statement. I believe says the same thing, like when I go outside, I could say like, I see the sun. Yeah, that's obvious. But what are you gonna do about the actual life that you have to participate in mutually with God and you? You can't just say that. Or then you get to step two. I pray to God. When do you pray to God? When you're in your car? When you sit here? I said, that's one type of prayer, but he's also called us to do multiple types of prayer. And that he's actually put precedent on the prayer of sacramental worship and communal worship. I mean, it's hard to defend people's attitudes when we rationalize feelings and attitudes for our benefit, because then in turn, we are just as bad as a polygamist. We are just as bad as these other people because they have gone to this point to rationalize why they do what they do. We do as well too in various attitudes, various degrees. And so that's why when we think of these attitudes, we have to really be mindful of how can we not fall into these despairs of how to live a Christ-like life and then turn into an attitude like it's completely impossible. I mean, truthfully, if we think about it, if you listen to what Christ says and what to do, it truly is impossible to be Christ-like. Okay. Then in turn, you could say, all right, well, that's why there's so few saints. I don't think that's a good statement because there's a lot of saintly people. Just because they're not canonized doesn't mean they're not saints. But I guess the problem is we find it to be such an impossibility. A, there's no checks and balances to say like, here's God the yellow shoe, say, hey, you're not being a good Christian, right? Or then C, we then also don't have the thoughtos, we don't have the willpower on us to want to do that because, as I've said in other groups as well, we don't talk about, because we don't think about the end. We don't think about the time when we close our eyes. We just kind of live in the now, which you're supposed to do with the foreknowledge of what's to come. But you don't dwell on it, it's just there. So when you see that, you then say, I'm going to do the best that I can today and every day going forward. But they don't think like that. I'm talking about in a Christian attitude. We do that about work, right? Well, I want to make as much as I can. I want to do all this stuff. I said, great, congratulations. And if you have all this money, what are you going to do with it? You can't take it with you. You're going to give it to your next generation, stuff like that. Great, I'll give you a clap on the head. That's what I tell people. Look at we celebrate saints with so much admiration. We take on their names, right? That's why we have these baptismal names. But I struggle to see people's feelings when all they do is they run and do all these efforts to amass whatever they want to amass in life. Wealth, material, houses, this, that. And I mean, if that's their sole focus. Because then what the struggles that exist is very few situations you see that it also becomes generational and family work. I mean, there's very few families who then also have that drive to continue and stuff like that. That's why you see many corporations, you see many companies. I even talk to restaurateurs, they're heartbroken when their children don't want what's on it. They don't want to take over the business. I said, so. And I said, why? Because why? Because of all that effort they put in there, they think it's their legacy. And so, is it okay if your child puts some new legacy? Or then if I say, God forbid, maybe your child is a man, maybe he becomes a priest. I always make fun of people whenever they talk about it. I actually get very upset when they go up to my parents and say, you should be very proud he became a priest. Because I thought my parents had said, I said, it was like, maybe your child should try to become a priest. The reason why I get defensive of it is because they're happy that it wasn't their child that attempted to become a priest and someone else is the one who did it. Why? Why? There are many people who are afraid or have a sensitivity of it because they have an attitude of the priesthood that not only is it overbearing, but then you have to act a certain way. Where I know people, I have friends who are clergy who have relatives that are, a convicted felon, gamble, steal, done this, done that, and they don't want to be a shame unto the family. And then in turn, you have this one who's not become a clergyman or whatever, and then the goody two shoes. Now, you ever seen the movie Saturday Night Fever? Remember John Travolta? Remember his brother when he was the priest? And then he actually left, and then he goes out and whatever. But remember, the whole time John Travolta's character is like, you only love him because he's a priest, and he's the good one, I'm the bad one. Something. Even though it wasn't the highlight of the movie, it actually had a big precedent. And I think people forget about that because it goes into Sunday, what we talked about 2 days ago, the prodigal son, right? You brought him in, and and I've been here this whole time, and whatever the case would be. But there's always that jealousy and envy, but it's very comical the amount of times that people always not commend my parents, but I've heard this many. They go to anyone, if they have a clergyman in the family, they should be very proud of them and stuff like that. And I get the fence of it only because it's like, okay, he's just a human being. We put into a different pedestal, but then if it was the vice versa, they discourage their children from wanting to do it. Or don't even, it's not even a topic. I guarantee with all the respect, if you have any of your boys, you never contemplate on it to be a priest. Okay, so that never happened, and you came to church or whatever, because truthfully, I'm just not out of occupation. Naturally, what we want our children to do is to grow and to prosper and to go into good fields, whether it's like we say a doctor, a lawyer, this, that, something or whatever. And it's not encouraged. And so, mind you, even though the priesthood was always in the back of my mind, I wasn't originally going in for it. When I went to UIC, I was studying psychology and history to go into possibly, pre-med as a pediatrician. Then I went into high school administration. I'm like, what do I want to do? Obviously, that's something about feeding and serving with people. But I knew it was in the heart, and one door closed, another one opened. And continuously our Lord was there, and that's when I finally kind of embraced and understood it and went from there. But it's not encouraged. I mean, that's why now, so the whole point of my piece right there is, that's why now there are so few clergymen. And just to give you guys a more scary outlook, there's going to be less coming forward to, and just prepare for that. Because in the Safe Our churches, I don't like the term that our churches blossom and grow and whatever. I mean, just because people are there doesn't mean it's growing. And I have a scary statistic where when you go back 30, 40 years ago, when you remember all those churches that had thousands of Orthodox Christians, and where do they all go? That's a scary reality where now many just don't attend church, or they attend predominantly a different denomination. There's possibly smaller pieces of like another Orthodoxy. Not so many though. It's either they go or they don't go. I think many don't go, just like my generation now don't have the drive, as I was saying before, to want to participate on Sundays, as I said, because of various excuses, like they're tired and stuff like that. But it's gonna be a scary sight to see because look at us. We're a 525 family parish, and I'm one solo priest. Yes, I have Father Chris on Sundays and the deacon, but that's just more sacramental. There's a lot that goes on here. And look, like you said, no, I got this and I got a funeral, and then you got other activities and stuff like that. It's clearly impossible for one man to do it all. Now, the truth of the matter is you need a lay leadership to help support, which we do have, but to take it to new levels. But The sad thing is that people always bring it up to you, their father, you know, the priest. I said, great, go find them. They don't
Father,
exist.
If you had a sister or a daughter, would you want her to be a nun?
A nun,
Yes,
want, that I can't decide. If it happened, would I naturally respect it? Yes, because there's no pride in it.
yeah, but if the girl wants to become a nun, why the parents have to go against? That's
Go
kind
against? Not everyone,
Okay.
what does that
of
mean?
one of the women who was against Senectarius. That says a Senectarius misled the.
Oh, in the, of his life.
I have a feeling she wanted to be a nun, not to be his mistress.
Oh, yeah, but
She
that,
fought him bad.
that was, yeah, but that was just more of, just trying to slander Saint Claudius continuously. You get those, but you know why they don't want to be nuns? Is because, when you're a nun or a monk, you're technically not allowed to see anyone. You're supposed to be in that monastic habit and you don't leave. So in other words, it's like you leave this world. You're not part of, you take on a new name. Your name isn't Maria, whatever. It's
Yeah.
whatever, it's, Efrosini, or it's some new, it's a new name that you take. So it's like a new life. And it's a life dedicated to prayer and to being with God. That's it. Now, we see in some aspects of some monasteries where it might have a little bit more liberty, that they might be more open, a little bit social, stuff like that, but no. And so that's why then you get parents, and then also biasly and pridefully, they get upset because then A, that means they won't get married, B, they won't have offspring, and then in turn, if that's your only child, then you won't pass on the name or any traditions from your family. I get it. So I feel the pain, but, okay, we've also put a bad, again, it's like the same thing with like anything, so we put a bad connotation to clergy and monasticism and all that stuff. It's not good. And so that's the problem. Monasticism, even now, clergy have a bad eye. Why they have a bad eye? Because people associate clergy with embezzlement, abuse, child this and stuff like that. It's a functionality. Or how I dress. Like I said, if I'm wearing a robe, I look like I'm a monk or a Muslim. If I have a long beard, they assume that I'm like a Taliban or whatever. And then if I'm the other side, if I wear a collar, oh, he's Catholic and he's clean shaved, and who knows, he's probably touched this or whatever. I can't tell you. That's how people think and act. And so that's why I said before that there's a shame or a discouragement of people to encourage their families into a life of service. Because that's what it is. Priesthood, monasticism, all those attitudes are service and dedication. It's not an occupation. I'm ministering to people 24/7. And it's not for luxury. It's not for great amount of funds. Okay, I'm very blessed. The community, everyone takes care of me. We're doing very well. Glory to God, but that's not what I'm in it for. You have to have that drive. And what I think sometimes happens is people and families and environments hinder that attitude because it's like, there's a lot of stipulations, like even with the priesthood, anyone can become a priest, right? Just go get ordained. And that's happened. I've seen it. Some like in Greece and whatever, because of like the need, they don't all have theological backgrounds. Might have been someone who was a chanter for 30 years and they just ordained them, all these various aspects. But sadly, it goes back to what I was saying earlier, just trying to talk about. We're not cultivating lives with Christ. We're not cultivating lives through our marriage. And then naturally, we don't cultivate that even in the aspect of the necessity of service. Because even now, philanthropically, our communities are given the most we've probably ever given financially, but we are giving the least amount of our time and talents than ever. We don't put the time, we don't put the effort communally. Yes, I'm speaking to bias. I get people that come often, but to do stuff because we'll do one event, give yourself a pat on the back. Sunday school does this coach drive, that's great. It's like you're expecting that. We are supposed to do this every day of our lives, every moment of our lives, every weekly. That's natural church. That's natural spirituality. It's ministering and giving, but we don't do that. Why? There's not enough time. I again put it into the aspect of Christianity. It's not a priority. I admit it. Serving people is not a priority. If someone could debate me and tell me how it is, I'd be very shocked to understand. But it's not the priority or a priority. To some, remember, I'm speaking generally. I'm not isolating anyone. Because I'm speaking to 3 people who I know very well, and I know what you do. So a little big picture, think about it. Do you really see people drive to put an effort to do and to serve and to minister selflessly? I mean, we have to talk about stewardship in both financial and time and balance to the understanding of a human, so they can understand that, hey, if you give more, you also get a bigger tax bill. People don't even do connection to that, but it has to be a reciprocation. People don't just give anymore. They have to understand what they are receiving back. That's why you've also gotten attitudes of people giving less or not being engaged. It's now a real problem where I have a lot of people in our church, they give financially, glory to God. Sadly, they do not give much of their time and talents. That's why we see the same usual faces. That's why we see the same people in the choir. We see the same people in this.
It was always like this.
It's a bad precedent. And so then why I would say this is because I'm not worried about you, not worried about your people, your age group. You guys have done the best part. I try to ignore what you did because I'm trying to move forward. When I say ignore, it's because I know you guys will just do because you've been embedded with it. I really worry about,
So I'm on the way, I've lost your mask on the way here.
it's optional,
Okay.
but it's up to you. I don't know if they have any up front. We might have one.
But don't worry about me.
Okay, yeah, but it's optional.
Thank you, I'm
Yeah,
so sorry.
no problem, no problem.
I'm still looking at my purse.
I know.
Usually have
I know, I
one.
think we have some up front, but yeah, for masks. Masks.
To go into
Oh.
the-
No, it's okay. There's some, I think there's some up front, but, and so that's it. What else?
But Father,
Yeah,
they may, like, I'm sure you do other things other than do giving. And other respects other than the church. Because I'm looking at my friends who are normally not Greek. And they are giving. So you're just talking about our congregation, is that what you?
no, a general society don't give. But who are your friends? Respect age group.
Well, honestly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bingo. My age group?
But then I'm gonna talk again about my children.
Hmm.
They give.
Yeah, but they're older than me. They're like 60.
Oh, wait, no, yeah,
Okay.
some of them.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that though, they're taking that and teaching their children. And I think they have friends that do the same thing,
Mm.
so I don't look at it as you kind of have a more of a downer look on it, but I still see a lot of people that do help a lot, and not just my age or your, I see younger people also that help.
You're right. When I say I have a downer look, the reason why I have a downer look is because I'm looking at big picture, respectful. What's up?
Did you get my backpack?
Yeah. And your food, yep. I go,
I'll let you go. Is there all this?
yeah. Yeah, there's a day off today. What blows me away, I go back to what I said before, and that's, you're right 100%, so. But go back to the thing, we have churches who we all knew apart, when it was at St. Dee's, this one or whatever, St. Nicholas, St. Catherine, I'm talking about you have thousands of congregants, okay? So where are they now, all right? And if that's the case, then as a society or as people in general, we are giving, then why is starvation, homelessness, poverty, all those things just continue to not only be rapid, but actually now because of the pandemic, have also gotten worse. Because what I know, and that's where I'm biased, even to us, even the Greeks who I talk with, because you know, as Greeks, we have an attitude, especially with like my parents. I was here as a kid, they would always say, but I remember why they were saying it to me. You ask them for something, and they would say, then I have left, we don't have money. So I looked at us like 10 or 12, I'm like, you've been telling me for my whole life you have no money. That's impossible. We're paying bills, we can eat, I had toys, I was good, I was blessed. And I'm like, so when you keep saying you don't have money, I'm gonna have to call your bluff. Because, and when I say money, I mean, I'm thinking of practical to purchase whichever you want to purchase. Now, money can be defined in many terms. As Greeks, you say money, that means you could be an echelon of like a multi-millionaire or whatever, or whatever they can say. We don't have money, right? We're not gonna up it down and left that way. We don't have just money to throw around. So what I've realized though is everyone, most 90% of people who I have met are not only somewhat financially stable, but they can all give if they wanted to. If they wanted to. I know most Greeks. I know most people that I talk to, whatever. They don't have a lifestyle of just naturally giving.
I believe Americans are the most giving people.
But aren't you saying it in a plural? I mean,
Well, that's what I'm talking about.
you might be blessed because you might actually know of quite a few, but at least in your circle, or to the ones that give. The sad part that I witnessed is that I know more people that don't give than do give. Maybe that's how I see it.
Are you limiting it only to?
No, I'm saying this open. But I'm also speaking in my age group, in the 30s to 40s, where their whole goal is just to continue to amass, to receive. And then I know people that are part of like, wealthy families or have generational money in families where it could be twofold. So to your point that you brought up congregationally, what shocks me is the lack of need or want to give to the church. There's no drive. So then if they're giving to other entities. That's when I bring up the conversation regarding like the first, if most people are just a general taxpayer and you have a threshold, especially around 10 grand to give, that you can use it as a write-off, many families. I mean, the percentage of our people they give, there's nowhere near it, so they can give it that much to this church. So then my contemplations on who they give to.
Yeah.
So that's what I think. So I know, and we're talking about these are educated families. They have their accountants, they encourage them to do their stuff, right? So then I'm like, so it's all hypothetical. Let's just say a family here gives $600 for stewardship, okay? And let's just say the number is 10,000. You're telling me these families are giving 9,400 to other entities?
I don't know.
Again, it's assumption. I'm assuming you made a statement as well too. But then my question then is, so then if they don't give, what do they do with any excess money? Naturally, they save it, they invest in it, and that's it. That's where I truly don't believe that. Well, I know we don't. It's because the problem is we don't give what we're supposed to do. That's hard. Why? If you listen to this and to what he says, Christ, and how continuously tells it's better to give and to do everything else, I mean, we are ashamed. Most of us should be ashamed of what we do and give, because in turn, we're not doing what our Lord tells us to do. And that's a great disobedience to the will and the commandment of God, where he says to give and to give joyfully and to be the manner when he tells us, okay, and then to be like the widow. The best example, and I read it this past Saturday, we're going to finish up. I know we only got through halfway through the chapter, but it's a good topic. The widow gave her only 2 denarii that she had to the treasury of the church, only 2. So it says, even in her poverty, she gave the most, while the other person and their wealth only gave whatever they had excess. That's what the problem is. That's what I'm going to say. We just determine what we want to give in small increments. And it's only the financial part. That's what I'm saying is when I think of a livelihood of Christian stewardship, a life of Christianity, it is doing the whole echelon. That's why I think the funds are the last part. Are people giving their time? Are the people giving their talents? And then naturally their treasures to the church to serve for the greater thing. Because then I tell people it's our church, and I even know speak about Christ, and we'll finish up there. We do a lot. We're ministering to a lot. I'm very proud of our community's efforts in so many various areas. Yeah. It just shocks me that it's still kind of pulling teeth to get people to get engaged. That's what I want, involvement in their physical sense with helping out with philanthropic and ministering needs to the community. Greater community, not just our church, but to the greater community.
It's a lot of work.
So then are we lazy? Yes.
No, when I was younger and
I'm
I
not,
was
but you
here
gotta
all the
understand,
time.
see,
No.
Froso, time out.
No, it is a lot of work.
Froso, time out.